We're talking about this major deal that has been reached in Washington among Democrats on a huge bill that would include some $369 billion to address the climate crisis. So let's bring in the director of the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute and Professor Erica Fleishman. Erica, thanks for being with us. We just heard from President Biden discussing what they're calling the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. It does provide that $369 billion for climate, clean energy provisions, should jumpstart a lot of those projects out there. It's the most aggressive climate investment ever made by Congress. Tax credits, more tax credits for electric cars, new and used, weatherizing homes. When you look at this package, first, were you surprised that the Democrats actually reached a deal, and what do you think of it?
I'm really glad that they reached the deal. I think it's a fantastic piece of legislation. I'm very excited by it. It's fantastic to see this happening.
That's great. So the president has also cited climate change as a national security and economic risk. And when you look at the bill, what are the biggest drivers in this bill? What are the biggest difference makers, let me say that, in this bill that when you look at it?
I think recognizing that there is this really strong connection between the economy and climate change. And when President Biden points out that climate change also is a risk to national security, he's echoing what the military has said for decades. The military probably was recognizing the threat to national security before scientists were recognizing the threat. So I think that it's fantastic to see the president making that connection between the economy and climate change, both that climate change can have devastating economic effects and that responding via mitigation and adaptation to climate change can be quite strong for the economy.
And the president, you're right, Joe Biden's been talking about that for years, that the United States should not just be in competition with China on all these new technologies for green and clean energy, but should surpass them, and that's what he wants. It's a jobs bill. He's an old union guy, or has support for unions, and so that's one of the ways he looks at it. And we're having this summer of suffocating heat, massive floods, all the rest of it. What's your take on what's happening with these record high temperatures and wildfires and all the rest? And do you think that the general public is now alert and aware and committed on this issue?
Well, I hope so. I think that evidence suggests that awareness is increasing and that when individuals are affected, especially directly, but also indirectly by changes in climate, that they become more aware of the changes and also that their policy preferences tend to change, that they tend to become more supportive of policy action on climate change when they've been directly affected by high heat, by flood, by poor air quality, by wildfire, you name it, anything that is tied directly or indirectly to climate change.
And given the urgency of this, how do you rate the efforts that the United States has made across administrations to address climate change?
I think it's getting better. I think the imperative also is getting greater, both in terms of mitigation and in terms of adaptation, and also in terms of recognizing that the direct and indirect effects of climate change are not equitable, that some communities, both within the United States and outside the United States, are disproportionately affected, and they're usually the communities with the least resources to respond effectively. So dealing with climate change via mitigation and adaptation, it becomes a national security issue. As we've mentioned, it becomes a human rights issue. And I think that the United States is increasingly doing better on this. And it's in its own interest to do better on this.
And how about individual Americans? Do you think that lifestyles and the awareness of it, of this challenge that the world faces, do you think that Americans are improving, are more conscious of it and working, doing their part to help fight it?
I think Americans are more aware of the resources that they need and how they can work collaboratively. There are individual choices, but there's also provision of resources for communities to have self-determination, to decide what's the most effective response by their community, by their state, by their neighbors. And so talking with government officials and saying, for example, we need resources for during a heat wave, we need cooling centers. during a wildfire, we need to be able to evacuate more safely and to have a stronger alert system. So I think that individuals are coming together in their communities and having stronger dialogues with public agencies and with the government to say this is how collectively we can have a much more effective response and benefit both individual quality of life and benefit national and international issues.
So it's not just about getting yourself an electric vehicle. It's about joining together to work for change. Erica Fleishman, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.